What's up, guys? Welcome to a new day. I'm Stephanie Ryder, and this is the 365 Shares podcast. It's January 22nd, 2024, and this is the 22nd episode of the 365 Shares podcast. The topic for today from the Strengthening My Recovery book is Step 4. And I realize that we haven't covered Steps 2 and 3 because the book jumps around a little bit. So I'm going to read Steps 1 through 4 for you from the Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Families website. Step 1. We admitted we were powerless over the effects of alcoholism or other family dysfunction, that our lives had become unmanageable. Step 2. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Step 3. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understand God. Step 4. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. And for those of you not familiar with ACA, I wanted to give you a little bit of context. So I found a great article on 12steppers.org that says, the fourth step tells us to make a moral inventory. The phrasing is both demanding and infuriatingly vague, but the all-encompassing term inventory is as broad as possible by design. The vague term is designed to do one thing: make sure we have nowhere to hide. One of the main patterns of addiction is an overt and repeated reliance on deceit. We spend a great deal of time and energy lying to others, but most importantly, we lie to ourselves. We try to deny the depths of our addiction and the extent of the damage it has caused to us and others. The lies and denial allow us to frame our destructive behavior as somehow acceptable and sustainable. Correspondingly, removing the veil of deceit makes it far harder to continue to inflict pain knowingly on ourselves and our loved ones. So think of your life as a dark room that has not been cleaned for too long. The fourth step is like opening the curtains and letting in the sunlight. It reveals the mess and dirt all around you. You aren't cleaning anything up just yet, but you are faced with the undeniable fact that the room can't stay this way. That is what moral inventory is. Looking around this horrible room, remembering that it was once clean, and with some effort, can be clean again. I really love this explanation. I love that it talks about ourselves as a dirty bedroom. We've all had that experience where you walk in your house or your room and you're like, oh my God, like a bomb went off in here. What happened? And you've probably just been going through a lot. You had a busy few weeks or a month. Maybe you've been depressed. Who knows what's been going on? But at some point you have that moment of clarity and you snap back into yourself and you're having a lucid day and your mental health is better and whatever emergency has been resolved. And you're able to look around with clarity and say, oh, yeah, I need to do something about this. And step 4 is not about changing your behavior. It's just about looking at it all with honesty. And I like that it says we spend a lot of time and energy lying to others, but we also spend a lot of energy lying to ourselves and pretending that our behavior is sustainable. And if you're in ACA, you may not be addicted to substances. There are a lot of people who are in other 12-step recovery programs like AA or NA, but you might have different coping mechanisms. You might just be really codependent. You are doing in your life. There are ACA dysfunctional behaviors that you have learned from your family, that you have learned from society, that you are perpetrating or reenacting in your own life. And that's what step 4 is about. Am I angry all the time? Am I people-pleasing and saying one thing to people when I really mean another thing? Am I gossiping? Am I addicted to a substance, to sex, to gambling, any of these other energy-releasing behaviors that you may be using as coping mechanisms? And the Big Red Book provides a list of all the things that could possibly be considered what they call defects of character. Ultimately, your goal is to give up your responsibility for having those defects of character and asking your higher power to humbly remove them. But we're not going to get to that part yet. We're just talking about step 4 today. And the passage in the Strengthening My Recovery book from the Big Red Book says, without knowing the meaning of the abandonment encoded within the past, the adult child is doomed to repeat it. The unexamined past becomes the future of the next generation. So what the book, I think, really wants us to think about today is how we have to look at our behavior, how we have to look at our history, in order to have a different future. And there's a very common trend among trauma survivors, among people from dysfunctional families, that we're always waiting for the other shoe to drop. If anything good happens to us, we know something bad is going to happen right after it. So we never get too comfortable. We're never too grateful. We know that the good thing that might be happening in this moment is not the end of the story. There's more pain coming. And that is not necessarily true. We obviously don't know the future, but it can become a self-fulfilling prophecy if you're so committed to this belief, as I have been in the past, as my partner is working on right now, that no matter what good happens in your life, no matter how hard you work, no matter how much progress you make, there's always something lurking behind door number 2 that's going to get you. And he talks about the future like imagining the future like a series of doors, where if you imagine that there's a door and behind that door is the love of your life or your dream job or retirement or healthy children or living on a mountaintop and meditating every day, anything that your future could be. If you imagine that door, you create the possibility of that future. And you can then choose to open that door and go into that future. So it's really important to imagine and envision any future that you could possibly want and not just dwell on all the negative things that could happen. Because if you're also envisioning future where your spouse leaves you, you get fired from your job, you're never able to retire, you have to work until you drop dead because you didn't do a good enough job planning for retirement, all these myriad things. If you're envisioning those things and creating those doors, those are also possible futures that you could choose to walk into. And you might not consciously think that those are the futures that you want, but if you're spending the majority of your time thinking about those negative futures, you are more likely to walk into them than if you're spending the majority of time thinking about your positive futures. And I think that's really what the book is trying to say here. And also that we're the biggest part of that, right? Our behavior, our thoughts, our coping mechanisms, our defects of character are the things that are preventing us from opening the doors to the positive futures that we really want, but maybe think we don't deserve. And even thinking that we don't deserve those futures is a defect of character. We have to take all of that into account. We have to write that all down. We have to take a talking smack about people behind their backs. Are we using or abusing a substance? Are we using sex and relationships as a way to feel whole when that can never make us feel whole? There's so many things that we could be doing. So if you are thinking about getting into some type of recovery program, if you're in ACA and you just haven't done the steps yet, really think about researching step 4. It's pretty consistent among a lot of different 12-step programs. And thinking about what it would take for you to start your list. What kind of mindset would you have to get into? What kind of safe space would you have to be in? Would it be easier to do it with a friend or someone from your recovery program? Think about what it would take for you to start your step 4 list. I'm Steph, and this is my share. The affirmation for today is, on this day, I affirm my commitment to examining my past so that I can help change the path of my future and the future of those close to me. Because the topic today is step 4, and it's really about acknowledging our own faults, or what ACA calls our defects of character, adults who still feel like children and act like children, and maybe is a little bit more from the victim perspective, but there's what they call the other laundry list. And that's when you adopt the behaviors that are closer to your persecutors or the people who were victimizing you as a child. So I'm going to read the other laundry list, and then I'll talk about a few areas where I think I fall. 1, to cover our fear of people and our dread of isolation, we tragically become the very authority figures who frighten others and cause them to withdraw. 2, to avoid becoming enmeshed and entangled with other people and losing ourselves in the process, we become rigidly self-sufficient. We disdain the approval of others. 3, we frighten people with our anger and threat of belittling criticism. 4, we dominate others and abandon them before they can abandon us, or we avoid relationships with dependent people altogether. To avoid being hurt, we isolate and dissociate and thereby abandon ourselves. 5, we live life from the standpoint of a victimizer and are attracted to people we can manipulate and control in our important relationships. 6, we are irresponsible and self-centered. Our inflated sense of self-worth and self-importance prevents us from seeing our deficiencies and shortcomings. 7. We make others feel guilty when they attempt to assert themselves. 8. We inhibit our fear by staying deadened and numb. 9. We hate people who quote-unquote play the victim and beg to be rescued. 10. We deny that we've been hurt and are suppressing our emotions by the dramatic expression of pseudo-feelings. 11. To protect ourselves from self-punishment for failing to save the family, we project our self-hate onto others and punish them instead. 12. We manage the massive amount of deprivation we feel coming from abandonment within the home by quickly letting go of relationships that threaten our independence, in parentheses, not too close. 13. We refuse to admit we've been affected by family dysfunction or that there was dysfunction in the home, or that we have internalized any of the family's destructive attitudes and behaviors. And 14. We act as if we are nothing like the dependent people who raised us. Of these, the one I think that stood out most was number 3, we frighten people with our anger and threat of belittling criticism. I definitely have gotten feedback from people, especially family members and some friends and a few romantic partners, not all, that I'm angry or that I'm very critical of them. And that is definitely something that I acknowledge. I think that I developed that as a defense mechanism to keep people away from me, because in my family, any weakness is preyed upon. So if it seems like someone is sad or they can't stand up for themselves or they don't have people who are on their side, then everyone else gangs up on them and just does whatever dysfunctional families do. And it's not fun. So I've worked a lot on my anger. I've talked about this before. I think I went a little too far in working on my anger to be a little bit too nice and too accommodating and not talking about my feelings enough or not expressing my frustration enough. And someone shared tonight that they really identified with the original laundry list and that they were afraid of authority figures and that they suppressed a lot of their feelings and their anger, and that had caused a lot of depression within them. And I definitely have felt that, where if I can't express myself, if I don't have a healthy outlet for the anger and the feelings that I'm feeling, then I just put it all on me and I get really frustrated. And there's a great book called Everything is Effed, a book about hope by Mark Manson. And he tells a story or gives an analogy where he says, if someone walks up and punches you in the face, then you're hurt. You're the victim, they're the perpetrator. If the police come along and they arrest this person and charges are pressed and they're found guilty and they have to do anger management and community service, then everything has been put right, justice has been served. They are clearly the bad person and you are clearly the blameless victim. However, if someone walks up and punches you in the face and nothing happens, or if the police come and say, well, you were kind of asking for it, then you turn all that pain and all that anger onto yourself, because clearly you were the bad person. And childhood, especially in a dysfunctional family, is a lot like that, where bad things are happening to you, but nothing bad is being done to the people who are doing bad things to you. So justice isn't served. So we really internalize as children this false belief that we are the cause of our pain and that we are at fault, we are the problem, we are the bad ones, because we're not seeing anything to the contrary growing up. So one of the things I've been working on is finding that healthy mix between being a victim and being a perpetrator, which is really trying to be assertive in a healthy way. Standing up for yourself, stating your boundaries, enforcing your boundaries without belittling someone else, without criticizing someone, without getting angry and yelling at someone, without putting them in a position where they then feel like victims. And that's important for 2 reasons. 1, because I want to be a good person. And 2, because it's better for my mental health if I can express myself. And then actually there's a third, which is that it's actually more powerful to be kind, because we really give our power away when we have an oversized reaction. And I've done this many, many times. When we have an oversized reaction to something, then everyone else points at us and says, look at them, look how reasonable they are, look how angry they are, look how critical they are, look how unhinged they are. And then everyone looks at you like a monster. And this has happened to me so many times. And my sister even has a nickname for me that has monster in it. I don't want to be that person, but I also don't want to always feel like I never win. And that's kind of a horrible thing to say, but I'm being honest, is I want to have a positive win-win resolution to any disagreement where both people feel heard and there is an acknowledgement of pain and there is a plan to avoid similar situations going forward. And it's really hard to get a win-win when I flip out at someone and explode, and then they just cry and tell everyone how crazy I am. And then I just have to apologize for my behavior. And then they don't really feel like they have to apologize because clearly they were the victim. And then the same thing is probably going to happen over again. You're in that Cartman drama triangle where you're always chasing the victim, the perpetrator, and the rescuer. And everyone's kind of interchangeably using those roles. So we really want to get out of that drama triangle. We really just want to get to a place where everyone can say, that really hurt my feelings, or I really don't like when you do that. Can we get to a relationship where we're treating each other more respectfully? And it's hard to do. It's hard to not get mad. It's hard not to swallow your rage and just be a people pleaser. It's hard to put yourself out there and be vulnerable by using I statements and asking for respect when you don't know if you're going to get it or you don't know if you're going to be belittled. So it's kind of a tightrope walk for sure, but it is something that I'm working on. And I just wanted to be honest and say that I definitely have a lot of traits that I'm not happy with. I have defects of character that I'm asking my higher power to remove and that I'm working hard in meetings and my step work to remove as well. So that's really all I have today. I hope you had a great Monday. I hope the rest of your week is easy. We're pretty well into January right now, so I'm sure if your work has been slow like mine is, it's going to be picking up. And I just hope you're in a great place with your recovery, or at least that I've given you some food for thought.